This is Command Sergeant Major retired Dave Eustace with Chief 54 interview with, I don't know if you're Sergeant First Class or Sergeant First Class promotable, Josh Ray from the great state of Texas. Which is it? You're promotable or?
Promotable, just pending the selection letter. So we should have that here in the next week or so.
Awesome. Well, we like to start these things off by saying, why don't you tell us a little bit about your recruiting story and your background in recruiting?
Sure. So I'm First Class Ray. So right now I'm the NCOIC down here on the northwest side of Houston that pretty much stretches all the way out to College Station and almost a Bastrop at this point. Background, 3 years or actually 5 years total in the Minnesota Army National Guard Recruiting and Retention Battalion. 3 years AGR. Took about a 6-year break in recruiting and found my way to Texas somehow. Loaded everything in a U-Haul, never even been to Texas outside of stopping at Fort Bliss for a week, and I get put in the middle of nowhere I've never been and start writing contracts.
Well, it's pretty rare at this circumstance, so I got to count some of your contracts. So you're one of the few people that I've interviewed that I, got to benefit from your great ability to recruit. So I do appreciate that. So you figured out Texas pretty quickly. You're very different than a lot of people that are in recruiting because you recruited in 2 different states. I'd like to talk about that down the trail. First thing I'd like to talk about is, how do you enlist 50 people in a year? Everybody would like to know that.
No, it's all, it really was focused on how I really structured my year by quarter and what those targets were, even when they were down to by quarter, it's what were those targets by month. So I always had a strategic plan on how I approached the school year. I was in an interesting situation. I had a small college, 18th largest college in the state of Texas. So not a very big one in retrospect, but had a small ROTC program, somewhere around 80, 85 cadets. And then I also had 5 high schools that ranged anywhere from a graduating class of 22 to a graduating class of 360. So not a ton of high school students in general, and a pretty small college. But it was all focused on how I could manage my time effectively. I'm 2 hours from the flagpole at that point in time. It's a 2-hour drive one way to get to MEPS. So I knew I was only making that trip once a week. So I was load up the minivan and go. But yeah, it was all me figuring out my time management, and I had structured points of my day. I had certain days I would do, certain tasks at those schools. Once you're able to break in and figure out who your COIs are in those schools and how you can get into them, whether it's with COVID or without, and how you can build that relationship by understanding what they find value in and then capitalizing and leveraging that relationship.
Well, just to contextualize that is at least 1 enlistment a week for the year.
Right.
And because there's only 248 match days, it's actually a little bit better than that. It's like, every 4.9 days, and you probably didn't work up until the very last day. So you talked about time management, which is a challenge for a lot of recruiters. And you talked about prioritizing the schools. Can you give something specific, like beginning of the day, beginning of the week, how you approach finding somebody?
Yeah, my focus and now with my soldiers that we have on the team is that focus on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday is how am I going to generate an enlistment for next week? And that's everything that they focus on those first 3 days. On a day-to-day basis, it differs a little bit, right? Come in, check your emails, get some quick follow-ups, and then grab your stuff and hit the road. We're not going to find enlistments just sitting in the office. Walk-ins don't come in very often, and if they do, traditionally not of a high caliber.
Yeah.
So it's getting out and about and really structuring our days to figure out how we can maximize our time. One of the biggest things I struggle with is when somebody tells me they don't have enough time to do a task. or I don't have enough time to do all these things. You have plenty of time, you just don't know how to manage it effectively.
And just having enlistments taking a priority, like my two rules are enlistments take priority and never assume anything. If you live by that in recruiting, you're going to be doing pretty well. And there's 1,000 things we have to do in the Army, but the non-negotiable thing is we got to find people to join.
Yeah, I mean, that's the mission, right? Mission failure is not acceptable.
So 50 in a year cold in an area brings me to the first question to ask all Chiefs 54 is not why are you successful? You're successful because you're motivated and you're driven and you're going to win. But why aren't other recruiters as successful as you?
Depends on what your definition of successful is. I mean, if you have an individual that figures that the standard is the minimum, well, then is that really what we kind of live by as being a soldier in the first place, right? We don't just meet the minimum, right? You want to exceed that standard. It's just like the APFT. It's that drive and that desire to continue to improve and understand that, there's going to be roadblocks, there's going to be failure, depending on how you view that. Are you viewing it as a roadblock or something that's going to stop you and you accept it? Or are you viewing it as an opportunity for growth and realizing that you got to take an alternative approach on being able to crash through or go around or over that obstacle? But it comes down to the individual drive. How bad do you want it? How far do you want to go in your career? And if you're cool with being an E5, well, cool. I guess we need the guys that barely make mission too. But how bad do you want it?
Well, and now you have a little bit different perspective because you're at NCIC now. You're running a recruiting team, and you're not going to have a recruiting team right now that's 10 or 12 soldiers that are exactly like you. So how are you handling that transition?
It's different. So kind of a little bit of a backstory is November 16th, I took over as the NCOIC after I graduated MLC. So got back from MLC on Friday and took over a team on Monday. Definitely an interesting transition going from where I was to over here. And it took me a little while and a little evaluation to understand what, just like in doing an interview, right? And understanding your applicant, it was understanding the recruiters here and what really motivates them. Where was their shortfalls? Did they really want to grow? What drove them? Luckily I came in here and the environment is very, team and family driven. And, when they don't get that enlistment, they feel like they shorted their team. But it was opening their eyes. So that the track record prior to here was, I got 12 months to make mission. I'm like, well, why you guys, you have kids, they're out of school in the summer. You want to be coming into work? Do you want to be struggling and trying to get a school kid that just is enjoying his graduation parties? You want to be making all these cold calls, or do we want to knock this out in 9 months? So once they understood, the method of my madness and kind of how I did things. I mean, it was nice, right? I came in here with a little bit of street cred. But once they understood how I did things and how we manage our time, and that every Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, it's what am I doing to generate an enlistment for next week? Right. All of a sudden the team starts clipping. And for this, we're already missioned out for this offset quarter that we have down in Texas. And right now for the quarter, we're leading the state. So to go from 9th place in the state when I took over November 16th to now be in 2nd place in the state behind my old team, actually, that I came from, they kind of got a couple contracts out of me before I got here. But they won't let me take them back, of course. I already have. But
that kind of brings up an interesting point. Not only for NCICs, but also for recruiters, is this job is totally different when you're winning.
Yeah.
It's the best job in the world.
Yep.
When you're writing contracts. It's the worst job when you're not.
Yeah.
And I think your new soldiers are discovering that, like how much more time in the day they have
Mhm.
and how much more
Yep.
capability they have. It's just an old adage in recruiting is when you're ahead, you're a different recruiter.
Oh yeah. Well, that comes with that confidence, right? You're not recruiting, not scared, but you're not recruiting because you're not being forceful. It just comes more natural. Um, it's just an easier life, right? You can be more yourself than um, struggling and trying to pressure somebody into doing something, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And you can't buy a contract when you need a contract. It's just how it works. It's like recruiting God's law.
No, I mean nobody wants to recruit out of desperation.
So I'm interested in kind of both perspectives, the recruiter perspective and now in your new role, that perspective of how you focus on getting your soldiers and how you thought about developing the area that you were assigned as a recruiter.
Yeah, I mean to me it was a challenge. I mean I always looked at it as, I mean I've been here, shoot, on the 16th it'll be 2 years. But in that first couple months down here, middle of February of 19, it was, an area that hadn't been producing. The biggest high school it was assigned had written 0 contracts for the National Guard in the last 3 years. The college had written maybe 2 or 3. The numbers, the guy who was there previously made mission once out of the 7 years he was there. So for me, it was that challenge. It was like, how can I take this area and completely turn it upside down? How can I own the DoD market share, right? Which on NGB side, they're like, hey, 12% DoD market share. No, mine was 53% at one point in time last year, DoD market share. So when, of course, always when USAREC would call, how many recruiters you got there? It's like, well, we got 5. No, it was just me. You guys can bring whatever you want to the table. It's not going to stop me. But I wanted to really dig in and figure out, how can I develop these relationships, and not just for myself, but I didn't want the next person that came into there to be in the same situation I was, starting from scratch. I wanted to be able to hand it off and let them continue to have that legacy up there, and really push forward. So that was me, right? That's my perspective on it. And then coming down here when COVID's going, in the Houston area, obviously a lot of our schools are, I mean, you get to the speaker at the door, you hit the buzzer, and that's it. That's how you get in the school. Like that's all you get out of the school. So it's how do we develop our area? Well, I can't even get into the school is a lot. So I had a handful of soldiers. I can't even get in the school. Okay, well, what'd you do? Well, I went there and I pressed the button at the door and they said I couldn't come in there. So I came back here and kept doing the same thing I've been doing. It has not resulted in me writing any enlistments. Right.
Yeah.
So what alternative avenues did you try to get in there? I said, who's the athletic director? Who's the football coach, the basketball coach, the baseball coach, the economics teacher, the history teacher, health class, right? Who are these people? Because if I got to spend $75 to buy all the football coaches Chick-fil-A lunch and I can't get into school, but we sit on a picnic table, right? And that coach teaches the health class, I bet we can figure something out.
Yeah.
There's a different way in. It's just that whoever that gatekeeper is at the front door, sometimes I got to find a different entrance. There's not just the one, there's multiples.
Yeah. There's a couple things
so
that yeah, go ahead.
No, I mean, so they're still doing their part to work their areas. I mean, if we can't get into the door, a lot of our stuff right now has been focused on the school list. And especially this time of year, specifically high school juniors. I mean, we're in that January, February, March timeframe where 70% of them are turning 17, and they're not getting beat down by the other recruiters. So now we're starting to see those individuals that told me that they were struggling. Well, I text my school list once, I didn't get anything back. Well, do it a 7th time, and if you tell me the same thing, which I'm willing to bet a paycheck, you won't tell me the same thing, right? Magically we got some interviews coming in from high school juniors.
Well, I wanted to highlight a couple things that you pointed out because I think primarily to these interviews, New recruiters are very open to listening to what some of the best recruiters are doing. And the other best recruiters are open to listening to what some of the best recruiters are doing. So sometimes we don't hit that middle. And so you touched on a couple things like having the data, knowing what the market share is, getting to that school website and figuring out who the power players are, who you can influence, who you can target that you're going to reach out to and have a communication with, and keep on pounding on the door. It will, in recruiting, it's kind of like it's never, never, and never always. It's never going to work. It's never always going to work what you do. So that's why you got to keep on doing stuff. So I'm really glad that you mentioned that, because I think a lot of, especially new recruiters, can say, well, this is what I learned down at PAC. But, you know, that data piece is like, what am I going to do with market share? Well, you can prioritize your work. Like, I got to win this school for sure. I got to win this zip code for sure. So glad you mentioned that. So again, you're running a team and you're running a lot of recruiters. What is the daily prospecting plan that you expect of yourself when you were recruiting and your recruiters now, and what's the accountability?
For myself, when I was in production, it was, and even today, right, I'll still do it as well. Enlistments are not here in the office. What am I doing that is going to directly result into an enlistment or into generating leads for enlistment, right? And if I'm not doing that, something that directly impacts that, it's just a waste of my time, right? It's hot air. Now, I get it, right? You want to develop your COIs and all these things and get your community relations and know who the sheriff is and the mayor and all those things. That's stuff you do when you're missioned out, right? I mean, if it's a regular day-to-day operation, I'm doing anything I can to generate leads for enlistment. And if your mind's focused on that, well, then you're 9 times out of 10 not going to waste your time. Just like for these guys here, you know, it's how am I going to take my day, capitalize on every single second of it to generate leads for enlistment. So, and for everybody, it's going to be different, right? I have an on-campus recruiter at Texas A&M. 5 seconds down the road, I got an armory that's where we have recruiters in Bryan, you know, that are being told, like, I can't get into this school, you can't get into that one, but you got to get the heck out of the office, because RZ is great for tracking stuff. It's good to see, like, hey, this is your conversion rate, or this is your amount of contacts or amount of interviews. But I know that not a single NCOIC is going to look at somebody's stuff for an individual that's 3 ahead of mission and go, well, you've only made this many contacts, right? I don't pay any attention to it. I mean, if the data's in there, great. But if you're being successful, I don't need to micromanage it, you know? So I'm out in the field with them. If I can get the heck out of the office and not be bogged down by all the things that fly out from left field, from the, you know, processing, or from the command team, or policy changes, get me the heck out of the office. I'm not going to make an impact sitting here playing armchair quarterback on the keyboard.
Yeah, I like that. Because what you're talking about is hours a day of prospecting. It's hours. It's not, well, I did a few things and it's going to trickle back. It's hours. And that's really hard for people to get their head wrapped around. It's like hours worth of time doing it. So I'm glad you said that. So when you go through the process of getting 50 people in the guard, that's 50 very different people. So your perspective on interviewing and closing would be interesting to hear, because that's a lot of different shapes and sizes and backgrounds of people.
I mean, when you look at, I think I timed it a handful of times last year, probably about 10, 15 times a time interview, from the time they came in the door and sat down to the time that I'd get them to say yes. And that average was only about 15 to 20 minutes. So I always go back. I'm a huge fan of the ASVAB program. Always have been. It's where, you remember, I'm sure, that's where we generated a lot of our leads for enlistment. I try to explain that to people down here, and some embrace it, some don't. But the ones that do are magically successful, right? So if I go through that program and I have them, I understand what they find value in, and that they have the aptitude, and that they meet height and weight based on what information provided. I know they're coming in the door, and I understand what they value. I mean, it's just like a phone call. You got 3 to 5 seconds to break down that barrier, because they don't know who the heck you are. They don't know your number. It's the same thing in the interview. You got the first 5 minutes, and you can probably close in the first 5 minutes if you understand what they find value in, and you can speak right to it. But I can take from point A to point B. I mean, I'm not the guy that dump trucks and puts all the information at them, right? And I tell them anything and everything, because if they don't find value in it, it's just a waste of my breath, and it's a waste of their time. But when it comes to that closing, there's times that you can just ask them. My old NCIC in Minnesota, he'd ask him within the first 3 minutes of meeting him. All right, welcome in. Good to meet you. Ray join. Right. And then would ask it at least, every 5 minutes after that. I think you know who I'm talking about. But we'll do the same thing. Sometimes you can hard close on somebody, and you restate those benefits and how they match up to what they find value in, and you can use that to close. If they have that objection, you tackle that objection, you roll right back into your close. I mean, I would tell you probably about 95% of the people I enlisted last year didn't even know their MOS that they were enlisting into until they either got to MEPS or they were in the car on the way to MEPS. Because based on what they were looking for, it wasn't about doing their job. It wasn't about a specific MOS. It was about everything that we provided to make them successful. Whether that was contributing to helping out their communities, or whether it was the education benefits, or whether it was how they could see themselves 3, 4, 5 years down the road in a better position than they were the day I met them. But that's something these guys have learned here is I've all of a sudden got 3 or 4 recruiters that now have learned how to get a commitment without even talking an MOS.
Yeah.
And magically, that interview time cuts down by about 2 hours. We're not chasing down a rabbit hole.
Well, that's something that you had to learn in Minnesota just because of the shortage of, we didn't know what they were going to get. But I think that's really important what you're saying, and for the recruiters listening, they have a hard time asking. They'll do scale of 1 to 10, or they'll say, how do you feel about the next step? Do you want to take or they'll start the stage of step processing, why don't we schedule you for the ASVAB, see how you do, and then you schedule them for the physical to see what they qualify for, and then they run into Marine Corps recruiter, and they're in the Marines. So it's really powerful that you say that you got to ask them to join. You got to have it in your head that this is coming out, and speaking to what they want to hear as far as why they came in the door. And that is I think that's a good lesson too for younger recruiters or people that are struggling. We're selling what they want to buy. We got a program for it. And I think recruiters have just a really hard time for that. The only program that a young person might want that we can't deliver on is staying in their mom's basement, smoking dope and playing video games. We don't have a program for that, but
no, that's not an MOS yet.
So, and it's hard to learn. I would imagine you're trying to train your recruiters now how to be a little bit more aggressive in that, and what are the challenges that you see in that?
I mean, the closing I always go back to, right? And I always reiterate, what they found value and how what we have matches what they're looking for. And if they're him and Han, I can't get them to say a direct yes, right? Because I'll ask them point blank. So you ready to join? What do you got going on Tuesday at, between noon and 1? Because that's when we're going to take you down and go to the test. And then they're like, "Holy crap, back up. I don't want to move that quick." I always roll it back in. I'm like, here's the deal. Today, we're not here about picking your job. Today, we're not here about, worried about going on a deployment or any of those things. Today's the day that I need you to look me dead in the eye, and I need you to look yourself in the mirror. And, today we're asking you that if something happens in your community where the governor of this state, the governor of the state of Texas or Harvey comes back in and smashes Houston again, and we activate 18,000 troops, are you willing to stop your life and respond and help out your community when they need you? And that's the question you have to ask yourself today. So what's the answer? Yes? Okay, outstanding. Let's move forward with the process. You agree with me? Yep. Okay, drive on.
That kind of gives me another question. Just your
Sure.
mindset. When they're coming in, do you believe that they're coming in to join?
I don't know. I mean, it depends. When I was up working in the college, I knew most of the kids. If they were walking in the door, which was pretty rare, right? If they'd walk in the door, I knew they were because they were interested in the ROTC program. And I was going to catch them and explain the differences in scholarships and benefits. And I was 9 times out of 10, I'm going to get them to say yes right there on the spot and build a packet. Here, if it's the interview process, I based on that phone call, we've obviously figured out something, right? And it's that when I called that lead in that 5 or 10 minute conversation we had on the phone, not, including Apple and DTs and making sure they're qualified, was this is where they're wanting to go. And when they come into the door, I'm going to about 95% of them are going to say yes before they leave. So do I believe that they walk in the door with the mindset that they're going to join? No, but by the time we sit down to them and actually get down and show them how their life's going to be better, they're going to say yes. Just depends on how I ask the question to close.
It's really interesting, your perspective on that, because I think they are coming in to join. They just don't know it yet. Like you're taking a big step, because a lot of young people are perfectly content, glued to their smartphone, just doing nothing all the time. And they got up out of their house and came to you when they told you they were gonna, which is like, and that's very powerful for our young recruiters. When they're coming in, they're making a lot of steps in your direction. And just understanding.
And I go back to the thing where it's I got 4 interviews a week, right? And I've got a 2 recruiters in this office particular that on Monday had 4 interviews scheduled for Monday. I said, I'm not going home until you're done. I said, let's build 4 packets, right? That's our mindset going into the evening. First one shows up, overweight. Second one shows up, doesn't have the aptitude, right? Third one, no shows. Fourth one comes to the door, we close, we build the packet, he's going to MEPS the beginning of next week. So I always try to do that thing that I have to have 4 qualified people walk into the door, right? And I always say you got to do 4 interviews a week. Well, you can do 8, but they got to be qualified applicants. Out of those 4 people you're that are qualified, you're going to get one, regardless of how terrible you are at closing. Or how terrible you are during the interview process. It's just a numbers game.
And it highlights how important the prospecting part is, so you can get those at bats. So we don't keep batting average. So you can take as many at bats as you want. We're only going to count the hits. We're not going to count the at bats. So that's awesome.
Yeah.
So with the volume that you have done, you process a lot of people. So your philosophy on processing and all the work we're putting in the prospecting and doing all those interviews, when it comes time to processing, what are some keys and some critical things that you do and make sure get done so you get that enlistment?
Yeah, I mean, it's documents put together. Most MEPS policies are going to be that 72 hour, right? Well, can I get a walk on? Okay. So if I got somebody that says, yes, even when I was 2 hours from the flagpole, 2 hours from MEPS, I mean, was there times I made 2 trips a week? Yep. You got to do what you got to do. But it was me getting them down there as fast as physically possible. If you said yes, right there on the spot, I'm already looking at the thing and looking at the calendar and saying, all right, here's 72 hours. Here, hold on real quick before you even leave. There's a walk-on still available. Yep. All right. Sounds good. I'll be here in all night until the packet's done. You're going, meet me here with all your stuff on this time and this day. We're going. We didn't mess around. I mean, the longer you leave them, the more and more it decreases that they're going to actually go down to MEPS. I mean, it's just like going over a weekend, right? If I interview a kid on a Friday, he talks to his neighbor who is a World War II vet or Vietnam vet in the Air Force about why he shouldn't join the Guard as an infantryman. I need to make sure that those outside influencers or his buddies on Call of Duty or whatever aren't going to get at him and fill their head with a bunch of BS. You said yes, cool. Now my commitment to you is getting you in as fast as physically possible.
Yeah, I preach is what I say. Preach. I mean, that is just because this is like, you can use this, you can steal this with your recruiters. If you put time and distance to a yes, it'll be a no real quick. And it should never take 14 days to get somebody enlisted, unless we got an extraordinary circumstance. And the sense of urgency that is key, and that's not even to write 50 contracts. That's to knock out your mission as soon as possible.
Yep.
So I'm glad you said that, because it is that when you're young and new in recruiting, you screw a lot of stuff up. But the sense of urgency is about effort and getting enough people to interview. So you got that one live body that's a yes that wants to go to MAPS is about effort. It's not about skill. So.
Well, I don't think any NCOIC is going to get mad at process, screw ups for a new recruiter or paperwork screw ups for a new recruiter. You'll learn that, right? If I got to put you in the front lead and rest for a little bit for every issue we see in your packet, then I bet you're not going to mess it up again. But just keep bringing them in. All right, I'll help you when it comes to the process and the paperwork and how to use RZ. I don't care about that. You can learn that, but I can't teach you dry, right? And I can't teach you to follow direction. You do or you don't.
Yeah, it's interesting, and I hope some leaders out there listen to that. Because a lot of people do get wrapped around the axle. You know how we were in Minnesota. It's like, well, we'll move them out and you got the person to MAPS. We'll move them out and they get the enlistment today. We'll retrain the soldier on the packet. And leaders need to understand that there's a lot of forms in a packet. A new kid's going to screw up some forms. So that's good stuff. I just got a couple more questions and maybe get some words of wisdom for you from you in the end. So what are you doing to take care of that many people, the service after the sale part? So you got a lot of people and a pretty big variety of types of enlistments. How do you take care of those people?
Well, it's an NCO's responsibility. The number one thing is taking care of soldiers, right? We got you in the door. You said yes. We're not just saying, all right, see you later, right? We got to make sure they ship and get out the door. So all our recruiters are required to go to drill. They all go to RSP drill. And we got that 120 report of applicants that are shipping in the next 120 days or in the next 6 months even. If there's something on there that we got to get squared away, we're taking care of it. But it's actually us sitting down with them on that Sunday at drill before they're released, one by one. They sit down with their recruiter and we go over a specific checklist. Is your bank account information changed? Is your home of record changed? How's mom and dad? What classes are you taking right now? Because I'm about to go to the school tomorrow and verify you're on track to graduate still. It's being that coach. You're mentoring these kids, not only to just get them out the door and go to training. That's one part of it, right? But our job is to make sure they're physically, mentally, and administratively prepared to go to training. And that's all aspects of taking care of a soldier. So you just got to make time for it at the end of the day. But you got to take care of them. You're only burning the bridge for yourself in that community or with that school. But it can have lasting effects for that soldier as well.
Yeah. And I'm guessing just based on your personality, you're more of, I'm a sergeant first class United States Army private. Look, I'm going to get you to the finish line here. You signed up to be a soldier. And I say that because I think maybe some of your peers out there that are recruiting don't transition from being the recruiter to the leader of that person. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, it does. I mean, you want to be, it's a relaxed environment when they walk into the door, but it's if you're taking care of them, right? You maintain, you help, you instill discipline, but you also got to remain to be approachable. So if they got an issue, they're willing to come to you. That's how you earn their trust.
What do you think your secret sauce is as not only as a recruiter, but recruiting professional? Now you're running a recruiting team. You're responsible for a ton of enlistments over the time that you've been in. What is your secret?
I think for any leader, it's their vision, right? And sharing their vision with their subordinates. And this is where I want to go. But once you understand everybody and what they find value and what drives them, everybody's gonna be motivated by something a little bit different. You know, some might want some more personal time. You know, some might just want to make mission and shut down, and that's fine. I don't have a problem with that. I mean, shoot, if everybody just made mission, you know, I'd be happier than you could think, right? But once we share that vision with them and really that perspective that I have, the command team has for them, and you get their buy-in, right? You get these soldiers, these NCOs to buy into your vision, they're going to follow you anywhere, right? Even if you're taking them right off the edge of the cliff, they're still going to follow you.
Yeah.
You know, but you got to earn their trust, and if they share that vision that you have is now shared through their eyes too, it makes your job 10 times easier. You know, you're not always going to have 100% buy-in, but you can have those informal leaders that influence those ones that aren't bought in, and they'll eventually come around. If not, well, maybe I need to send you somewhere else. Maybe recruiting's not for you.
You don't always have to like it. You just got to do it. You know?
Yeah. Yep.
So, like I mentioned before, I do think most of the people that listen to this will be new recruiters or struggling recruiters. So for that population of recruiters, what would be your words of wisdom that you would give them to get them off to a good start or to get them back on track?
It's actually, I mean, everybody's scared nowadays to write something down, but I mean, when I started, or even on a Sunday night, I'm a fan of Sunday nights, by the way. Okay, I'll work a 4-hour block on a Sunday evening and never work a Saturday. But on that Sunday night, what I used to do is I'd go into the office, and the first thing I'd do is I'd grab the whiteboard, and here's what I got planned for my next 2 weeks. Where's my white space? You know, and I always used to go back and look and said, this was the percentage of high school juniors that I have talked to in this school, or this is the percentage of high school seniors. And that for that hour or so, I would focus on what was my avenue of approach to get in front of that percentage of that population of that school. And where is my white space at? You know, this isn't a job where you have to work 12-hour days. I mean, every day I used to shut down at 1500 in my gym clothes and go work out and then come back to work. But it was me writing down and figuring out really where was my time used? You know, where did I have room to improve? What were the tasks that I had to accomplish that next day or that week, right? And I prioritized them. It's organized planning at the end of the day, and actually getting out of the office, because I'm pretty sure that the enlistments aren't hiding underneath the rug next to your desk.
Well, that's awesome. Have a plan and get to work. I really appreciate you doing this. I'm very proud of where you're at right now. That you have the Minnesota legacy, and that's coming to Texas. So we appreciate it.
Yeah.
And, keep on doing what you're doing.
All right. Appreciate it. Good to see you again.
Thanks.